While I tend to be a hater, and I enjoy my saltiness, I can't possibly hate or dislike Solo Leveling. I'm calling it now. Solo Leveling will be a classic someday that everybody turns to as one of the best adaptations to anime from a light novel. Solo Leveling slapped onto the scene in 2024, and I think most people who watched it couldn't help but have a huge smile while watching it. It's great. The accuracy to the manhwa is legendary in my opinion. I actually read it for once because I couldn't get the episodes fast enough. Let's start by asking a question. What makes Jinwoo Sung such a good MC, as well as the perfect host for the defender of the earth against the monarchs? Why was he chosen by Ashbourne to become his successor as the next Shadow Monarch? Why did the system choose him? Let's just quickly recap Solo Leveling Season 1 and start of Season 2. Jinwoo Sung is an E-ranked weakling hunter who is in it for some fast and bloody cash. His mother is sick and his sister is still in school, while his dad is missing. So he's basically left alone to fend for himself and provide for his family. He's a dork, and everybody calls him the weakest hunter in the world. Such a wonderful title to have. Jinwoo has a few friends, and one is a B-ranked healer who she seems to be his babysitter because he's almost always dying to low-level creatures that shouldn't kill him. So she basically just ends up healing him constantly because he's too, what's the word?
Stupid.
And he constantly is getting killed. Anyway, this kind of sets the scene for the first episode, where he ends up getting ready to be executed. Jinwoo Sung enters a double dungeon accidentally with a team of hunters. They are practically annihilated by the guardians of the administrator. Then, in the last-ditch effort, Jinwoo sacrifices himself to free the last few remaining hunters that are still alive. Jinwoo is pissed that he's dying and that he's the one who has to sacrifice himself, but he's also accepting of it because he is the weakest hunter. He knows that he's not cut out for hunting right now, but somehow he's ended up here. He's lying face up with no leg and no arm, getting ready to get axed. Then he receives a pop-up notification that cougars in his area want to meet him. It's actually just a pop-up asking him if he will accept the game that the administrator has created to find the next Shadow Monarch. Now, why did the administrator see promise in Jinwoo Sung? Is there a strength to be learned from this?
Absolutely.
Essentially, Ashbourne, the Shadow Monarch, saw a few things in Jinwoo. He saw his acceptance of death. He saw his willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He saw that Jinwoo desired to live and was willing to fight to the death to live. If all else fails, he will die so others can live. These are all traits needed in a Shadow Monarch who would resurrect the dead and still respect his soldiers. The acceptance of death. Accepting death is not an easy thing to do, especially if you're not regularly exposed to traumatic situations where death finds you. Even those who see death every day sometimes struggle to accept the things that they see. Different cultures around the world also view death very differently. In Western cultures, there's a strong fear of death, but it's foreign and it's unknown. We're taught to pursue an American dream of prosperity and wealth in this life. Such a dream helps blind us from our deaths that are inevitably to come. Thus, when death does strike, it shakes us up, and we are disturbed by it, because it's not an everyday thing. In some Eastern countries, and also in Mexico, death and the dead are celebrated consistently. They have moved on into the next life, into the next state of being, and family and friends, sad to not have them around anymore, still celebrate them for getting to move into the next life. Death is more present in the culture, and thus everyone has a better way of coping with death, which is a good thing. Having a healthy relationship to the understanding of death is important to growing up and growing into a well-grounded and well-rounded person. Jinwoo constantly was being injured, and badly injured to the point that he was critically wounded a few times before the manhwa even starts.
"'Tis but a scratch."
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've had worse.
These encounters with near-death experiences helped him to meet the requirements of respecting life and understanding death that the Shadow Monarch needs to have when raising soldiers from the Shadow Realm. Willingness to sacrifice for good. Another important factor was Jinwoo's willingness to be the sacrifice that allowed other hunters to escape. Often overlooked, but in order to become the next Shadow Monarch as a human, Jinwoo would be offered up to the monarchs alone. He would represent humanity, and he would have to be willing to take a stand in it and stand there in the breach between Earth and the attacking monarchs by himself. His death would eventually, it would be his true awakening into being the Shadow Monarch. The desire to live above all else. In order to be the Shadow Monarch, as a human, he has to be ready to fight. He has to have the desire to live and at any cost continue to do so. He could have, just died. But those destined for greatness, especially in anime, never give up. Bro was struggling, right? Like, Jinwoo was not having a good time of being a hunter up until this point. He was so weak that little goblins would do so much damage to him, he'd be in the ICU for days. It was not a good fit for him, but he didn't care. He knew he had to provide for his family somehow, and he did what it took to provide for them. I think we all don't give ourselves enough credit for how strong our will to live is actually. The Shadow Monarch qualifications are all things that we should strive to have. That doesn't mean go cave diving trying to find double dungeons, but it does mean that we appreciate life. We appreciate those in our lives that we hold dear, and that we are willing to sacrifice for others and for the greater good of our communities. Where is our purpose otherwise? If we don't have a purpose, why do we keep going? I think one of the hardest ones that we see in our culture right now is the desire to live above all else. There's a lot of depression and there's a lot of hurt. What the causes are exactly can be varied and vast in quantity and number and different experiences that everybody faces. But when I say desire to live, I don't mean just to survive. What I mean is to live life to the fullest and to thrive. To get outside and go on adventures, to go meet new people, to learn about our past and where we've come from, to see beautiful places in nature and architecture around the world. Well, that's all for this discussion. I'll see you in the next one.